Hello, everyone. By way of introduction, I'm Doug Shapiro, the Chief Sales Officer at VOZIQ. Joining me on the panel today is Jay Autry, Chief Customer Experience Officer at Brinks Home Security, and Vasu Akala, founder of VOZIQ, both of whom I've known and been working with for the past 15 years, helping customers like you solve the problem of customer churn. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, Jay, Vasu, and I will share with you how VOZIQ's predictive AI-powered customer lifetime value solution can predict emerging at-risk customers. Before turning it over to Vasu, we're all familiar with Forrester. Forrester's research says that it can cost 7 times more to acquire a new customer than retain an existing one. Having said that, I'll turn it over to Vasu.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. So I'll start with just one slide, but this is one of the key slides for the problem that we are discussing today, and how the technology, AI technology, and helps in kind of turning this into an opportunity for especially recurring revenue subscription businesses. Like the business could be telecom business, or home warranty business, or insurance business, or several other businesses where the customer lifetime is several years, right? So myself, a little bit about me. I had the opportunity to work over the last 25 years with two of the largest companies in the world serving contact centers. One is Convergys, one of the largest world's BPO company, and the other one is NICE Systems, which provides technology to almost like 1 out of every 3rd call center is actually running on NICE technology. So they both gave me an opportunity to kind of see this problem very, very closely. And what we discovered is what we have here on the slide. Nearly 30 to 50% of the customers who call to cancel are not savable, with traditional retention. What do we mean by traditional retention? It's you have a loyalty team. Someone says, I have decided to cancel. But unfortunately, the customer is calling by already, finding an alternative, or, kind of making up their mind, or discussing with their spouse that we don't need this anymore. And then the battle is, reactive at that time, right? We can certainly save some, but it is either expensive, or, we just can't save, even if we have the best of the best, process, right? 1/3 or nearly 1/2 is very difficult to save at that time, right? Over the years, what we learned is, if you have a lifetime of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, there's a lot of things, if we use this analogy of iceberg, that there's a lot of data points that are hidden throughout the journey. So in this particular example, someone is calling multiple times, or someone is living in a geographic area that is, highly competitive, or they're, probably not using the service you are providing as much as expected. All of these could lead to, over a period of time, churn risk, right? So, so given this, little observation that we have on the right side, this is, depending on how we see it, it could be a very simple opportunity for us if we change our mindset from being reactive to let's actually start sniffing out all these data points, because no customer really decides to cancel overnight, right? It's made up of, lot of experiences and watching TV and, watching, competitors doing what they do and all of that, right? And by the way, this is not just about retention. What we are going to be talking here is improving lifetime value, right? So think about in your industry, whether it is telecom or insurance or any other, pest control or anything, recurring revenue subscription. Think about this as upsell opportunities. They're not going to be made up just overnight. Think about satisfaction. That is not happening just overnight. Think about, upgrades and upsells, right? None of this is, happening overnight. This is all happening over a period of time. Certain customers are ready at certain points, and they give us traces of, all these signals, right? Being a computer science engineer, of course, I'm very enthusiastic about solving these problems. And we have put together AI technology and created predictive models that will, identify and almost give us like foresight to be able to identify who's ready for upgrades and who is ready for retention and all of that, right? And I'll say one last thing before I pass it to Jay. this is almost like, to keep it like ultra simple, think about a FICO score, right? So what is the bank, doing with a FICO score, right? Your interest rates are decided based on FICO score. The number of credit cards you have, the mortgages, they're all decided based on FICO scores. What we're going to be talking on this call is, it's a churn score, right? What can we do with a churn score if you have it for your business? Exactly like what a bank is doing, right? You can start differentiating the customers. On top of the churn score, if you have a upgrade score or a satisfaction score, imagine that for every single customer. Now you can start, kind of fully operationalizing all of these things, right? And the key here is, exactly like FICO score, if we have a number, sometimes it is very difficult. But what we have mastered here, and discussing this in Jay's presentation, is it's not just about the FICO score. It is also about what is driving that score, right? The number of credit cards that you have opened, that drives the credit score, right? The number of, the amount of money that you borrowed, kind of drives the FICO score, right? So we call it health indicators, or, in churn case, that is churn drivers. In satisfaction case, that is satisfaction drivers. So what we are going to be talking about for all of your, scenarios is a bunch of scores along with what we call health indicators. And that is when we can truly operationalize, and that is where we can, provide differentiated service to different customers, right? Hopefully this is very simple, we're setting up the, background about how this is relatable to each of your situations, whether you would like to improve your CLV scores by retention or upgrades or satisfaction or secure referrals. The concept is roughly the same, right? Generate a little bit of foresight, understand the drivers of the foresight, and then we can now operationalize this, on millions of touch points that we have, right? With that, I'm going to pass it to Jay, but, two things about Jay. Thank you, first of all, Jay, for taking time from your busy schedule and helping us and everyone else understand how, as the Chief Customer Officer of Brinks, how this team has, realized hundreds of millions of dollars in value. And I have to say this one thing before I pass it to Jay, that Jay is someone, as the leader, who keeps it simple. Think big, but keep it rather focused on one problem that has, significant value. And in Brinks' case, that happens to be churn and retention. And he kept us focused, and he's going to help us understand how we can all be realizing scales, value on the scale. So with that, Jay, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Vasu. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the journey we've been on for a few years. I will say it's, still the beginning of the journey. We've got some huge wins that we've been able to book, but we still have a significant amount of value that we're getting ready to go after. So it's a continuous journey, and it's been exciting. Vasu has been a great partner. I've known Doug for a number of years. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the story, and we'll go from there. So I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is just a quick backstory on Brinks. We're, top 3 home security provider. We protect a little over 1 million people in the U.S. and Canada. We have some awards that we've had, including 3 of the 5 years being ranked highest in customer satisfaction by J.D. Power, 24/7 call center, a little over 3 million interactions in the center, excluding alarms, and about over 600 customer-facing employees. So before we go to the next slide, just a little bit about where we started the journey. When I joined Brinks a number of years ago, all of the customer retention efforts were focused on the very end of the customer lifecycle. And when I say the very end, there was little focus given to the customer experience. And essentially, we were putting all of our eggs in the basket of saving customers when they called to cancel. And that, to further complicate things, when we had that chance was reduced in half because customers, as Vasu mentioned earlier, one of my favorite kind of comments, that half the customers were calling us to cancel after they had already made the decision and had selected another security provider. So, right out of the gate, your opportunity is cut in half when customers have decided to cancel, selected a provider because they know how important security is, and we have, less of a chance to save those customers. And a lot of it was put into the win back, which is a very valuable pursuit. We'll talk a little bit more about win back. But I'm the first one to say your entire customer retention strategy can't be focused entirely on winning back customers after they've canceled. It's extremely expensive. So as I mentioned, I'm a big believer in what Vasu said. Customers don't decide to cancel overnight. It's really the accumulation of experiences from day one, and then you add the pressure of competition, advancing technologies, and then value proposition. It becomes extremely important and obvious in the case of when you are able to generate the insight that a solution like VOZIQ can generate, that there's 99% of the opportunity the opportunity is earlier in the life cycle. So fast forward to today, we've got an AI-powered proactive customer experience platform, multiple predictive models, gives us a full picture of all the retention opportunities, but also the opportunities to increase customer lifetime value. So let's take a quick look at kind of the traditional approach. So if you think about kind of life cycle strategies, traditional ones are more of a reactive approach. A basic framework for life cycle management. You've got customer care. You're looking to grow through referrals or upsells, retention, and win back. And so for obvious reasons, those approaches are focused on different metrics that are very reactive. The most obvious example is what I mentioned earlier, is that the retention process kicking in when a customer decides to cancel. Or if you look at like CSAT improvement strategies that rely on an NPS score of just a sample of customers. So for example, if you say, you're getting 8 to 10% response rate on customer surveys, I'm confident most CX leaders would say that's a very good response rate. But then you have to really quickly realize, what about the other 90% of your customer base? So how important and how insightful can it be to have an actual NPS score through the predictive model for your entire customer base? So with that, being reactive, you're left with kind of disaggregated data. You're trying to make decisions on servicing and retaining, and then you've got a lot of customer lifetime value potential that remains untapped. So at Brinks, we realized that these reactive strategies weren't sustainable. We needed a different approach, and that's one that's enabled by advances that were being made in predictive analytics technology. So the AI powered by multiple predictive models gives you the ability to see the full picture of customer lifetime risks and opportunities across the life cycle for the entire base. So for example, now at Brinks, we don't have to wait for a customer to call us to cancel. Instead, the AI tells us which customers are at the highest risk of canceling at any given time. So again, going from a reactive position of when your only insight to a customer canceling is when they call you, now we're able to predict which customers are going to cancel at any point in their life cycle. So essentially every customer has a risk score. So this gives us the time to act well before it's too late. So it allows us to look at proactive, data-driven campaigns across the life cycle for every customer, and then unlock that significant customer lifetime value we're talking about. So at kind of the core, the backbone of this approach is really the AI technology that surfaces the customer level predictions with its multiple predictive models. And these models are specifically created for each stage of the customer life cycle and helps us, kind of harness the desired outcome we're looking for. So for example, if you, as I mentioned, NPS, kind of in the first section there, to be able to calculate an NPS on a predictive model for every customer in your base, differentiate promoters and detractors, may decide to implement call routing strategies or campaigns based upon knowing if a customer is a promoter or a detractor. Use the CLV to identify targets for upgrades and add-ons. The one that we launched first is really in the retention. It's using the predicted risk model to proactively intercept a customer who has high risk and extend their lifetime. So really, you kind of see that lift in from the traditional approach to more of an AI machine learning powered proactive approach. And really, as I mentioned, kind of the backbone or the core of it is really the technology and the solution that VOZIQ offers. You have these multiple predictive models that uncover the value. You've got millions of structured and unstructured data points. And you take that and you look at, developing customer microsegmentation. And then what I think is also key is offer optimization based on that segmentation. And then you can maximize that profitability. So we can take a look kind of about how we operationalized it. And this is probably, well, this is my favorite point of kind of the whole story is really kind of how we operationalized it, because I think I know you can have all the data, you can have, determination about if a customer is high risk, if they're a promoter, if they're a detractor, if they're a high cost. We haven't talked about that yet, but there's an element of being able to look at your cost to serve through predictive modeling. You can have all that information, but really how you operationalize it, for me, is extremely important. So if you look at on the left-hand side, there's really kind of two parts. You've got the AI-driven routing. So this is where you identify callers through data lookups, and then when a customer calls in through the IVR. And then really depending on their revenue, their satisfaction, cost, retention opportunities, that logic pairs them with the right team. And that team, and why that team is because they're better equipped to handle to that particular customer segment. So, based upon the pre-identified intelligence about the customer, fully automated, 100% over our several million customers a year. The second part, once you've kind of identified the customer, you've routed them to the correct group, is that the VOZIQ solution provides our agents with essentially an AI-enabled, super intelligent 360 view of the customer and really what actions they should take as a result of that. So if you kind of look at the section on the right, the four parts, first one is, in this case, you've got a predictive churn risk. So this customer, hypothetical customer is a 78% high risk. You've been able to determine through predictive modeling that they're a detractor. It could be one of the 90% of your customers who don't have a survey, but through the intelligence of the VOZIQ solution, you're able to determine they're a detractor. And then really what their risk segment is. In this case, this customer is a higher risk. They're an out of contract, a low usage customer. So really then you kind of pivot over to the second part, which is the offers. In our case, along with, NPV is something that we use to kind of value the offers and then also look at compensating our agents that way as well. So we started with the renewal offers, as I mentioned earlier, renewal offers for high-risk customers. Although in our near future plans, we're looking at non-renewal offers for upsells, may just be white glove service, could be data collection like emails, and really those are obvious ways to be able to still contribute to customer lifetime value through higher recurring revenue, lower cost opportunities. So really there's traditional renewal that we started with, but there's many other use cases in which you can maximize your lifetime value outside of just renewals. My favorite part of this screen probably is bottom right. That's the part 3, the health indicators. So I think we talked a little bit earlier about, having a predictive score is great, it's important, but it's really about additional layer of insight for our agents, what they're going to be able to do with that. So VOZIQ mentioned health indicators. This is essentially, important points about what's driving a customer to be high risk. Green obviously is not a contributor. You see where there's more contributor, they're identified in red. Blue is kind of a neutral situation. So you're given very important information about what's actually driving that risk. So kind of think of it as an X-ray of the customer that really kind of drives the prescriptions and the follow-up actions for that customer. And then finally, you've got some relevant customer information. In our business, we're providing home security. So for an agent who is either doing handling a high-risk customer or an agent who is upselling an existing customer, having the insight about what they're actually presenting from a security solution that's able to be tailored and customized for the customer's home. So where should an outdoor camera be placed? How many outdoor cameras should they have? Kind of basically being able to provide a tailored, customized security solution based upon having that additional insight. So the good news is with all the AI we've built, we know a lot about the customers and what really, more importantly, what really needs to be done about customers. And that kind of the icing on the cherry on top of it is really it's before that call's delivered. Right. So the agents aren't having to piece together different parts from the CRM system or other applications to try to make the determination, is this a high value customer, low value customer? What they should do is really kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of spoon fed to the agent, exactly high risk or not, what offers should they present, why are they high risk? So it's really kind of just, I think it says right there, it's an AI enabled concierge service specialist. So they're fully intelligent on the important insights of the customers. In this way, the entire team is working, I'm sorry, go back real quick. Really, the entire team is kind of working towards targeted outcomes that are financially proven. That's important because when we're talking about retention, there's obviously the benefits, but when you're looking at kind of maximizing CLV, being able to have them pursuing things that are financially proven, and then what's back tested on historical data on how to generate CLV. So real quick, why we started with the call center. These are interactions that are already happening, and it's more effective that way compared to other channels. And so we've got millions of phone calls. So it was an obvious first step for us. I think it's an obvious first step for most organizations. Go ahead and leverage and maximize the interactions that are already occurring. But I think it's key to say that this solution, while it starts in the call center, it really could be applied to any channel. So for us, we're talking about, now that we've kind of perfected offers, we've perfected the economics, we're ready to kind of expand the scope of this, or we did expand the scope of this really into email marketing, chat bots, direct mail, and then next channels will be web, app, things like that. So then let's take a quick look at the results. So our current run rate for proactive renewals is about 50,000 a year. That's a little bit of a kind of a self-imposed threshold. We had the ability to scale, but we wanted to make sure that we kind of maximized the program and definitely determine the right economics before we can scale a little bit larger. That resulted in about 15,000 saves. Those are customers who would have called us after switching. And so if you can imagine having all this insight versus having to save a customer at the very end, sometimes when they've already made the decision to cancel, sometimes when they've went to another provider. The thing that we've learned throughout this that I think is extremely important is the cost difference of saving a customer at the end of their life cycle versus the much smaller investment earlier in their life cycle. So we saw about a 10% reduction in overall cancels, over 10% reduction, which equates to over 200 basis points on an annualized attrition rate. And I think one of the nice surprises of this is the NPS score of these customers following one of these interactions. So you take a high-risk customer who was on an accelerated path to canceling with us, you've intervened, you've gotten them to the right agent, you've successfully presented them an offer that is a maximum value for the organization, it's a maximum value proposition for the customer. And after that's all said and done, that customer, high risk, fast track to canceling, is our highest promoter in the organization at 61 NPS. So all this kind of pulled together easily over $100 million of CLV once we're kind of continue to implement this through the rest of this year. So going forward, customers are staying longer. We're looking at additional opportunities to continue the maximizing customer lifetime value outside the renewal. We've got referrals. We've talked about upsells. And then I mentioned it earlier, and I think it's, again, one of the things that's not immediately jumped to is really kind of cost savings or cost management in the organization. You've got the opportunity to apply the same AI-enabled technology, the same kind of roadmap to how you present it through an agent and the agent guidance to look for opportunities to increase lifetime value by lowering one of its components, which is the cost to serve. So definitely has been a very enjoyable journey. I'm excited with the success we've seen. VOZIQ as a whole has been a great partner for us. And I'm super excited to see where the next few phases of the journey take us.
All right.
So with that, I'll turn it back over to Vasu.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. I think this is just, I always feel every time we hear from you, this is just an inspiring story. It's not an everyday story for any of us to kind of think about, oh, $100 million in value, right? I think it is realistic for everyone to think about, like, the possibilities that AI can bring, but only if we kind of change the paradigm a little bit, right? Instead of being reactive, let's be proactive. Instead of trying to kind of do everything for everyone, let's be very surgical, right? So thank you, Jay, for walking us through the journey and highlights. And I really like the part where you kind of explain why call center first, because there are so many ways to really put AI into the interactions, website and mobile app and so on and so forth. But it's always nice to hear your perspectives on this one.
Oh, thank you.
So team, I know we are almost out of time, right? So I'm going to quickly walk through this one. Everyone will have copies of these slides, so we are not going to spend time on this one, but there are some ideas and recommendations based on our implementations on where to start, kind of start with finance, business cases and think big about, opportunities that are there. But I do have one thing to put in front of everyone for anyone joining this webinar. We created like a very simple way for you to try this idea of like not just one predictive model, multiple predictive models that are created based on life cycle stages. You could be thinking about NPS, upsell, referrals, of course, churn. Any of these things will improve the lifetime value. And that's our differentiator. We implement a system of predictive models. We don't believe in this concept of one predictive model. And we also believe in this system of, it's not just like the FICO score, right? If your score is good or bad, you don't know how to improve it. But here we believe this idea of what is driving it? What is driving satisfaction? What is driving satisfaction? Who's ready for buying and why, and what they need to buy, right? So we will deploy that system. So to keep it ultra simple, we are creating this, very simple offer. So you don't have to worry about, budgets and variable costs and all of that. As long as the team can cover the data science resources cost, we will bring the predictive model templates, we will bring the hardware, we will run it in our cloud. And all we would need to make this happen in your environment is basically access to your data through one of your data analysts, right? And I want to say one last thing before we pass it to Doug for closing remarks. This idea that Jay discussed about multiple predictive models getting ahead of the reactive situation to proactive and taking advantage of all your structured as well as unstructured data works very well in any recurring revenue business, right? It could be, of course, we heard the story about home security, but think about, telecom, think about retail energy providers, think about pest control. All of these are recurring revenue subscription businesses. And the problem, through our lenses, we see it the same way. What is needed there is a system of predictive models. What is needed there is health indicators. What is needed there is a very effective way of operationalizing this in a way, moving from insight to actions. And then, naturally those actions will lead to millions of dollars like what we have seen from Brinks Home, right? With that, Doug, I'll pass it to you for any closing remarks.
Okay, good. I promise I won't take more than a minute to wrap this up because I know we're just 3 minutes over time. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope it was of interest and value. And I'll wrap it up by saying we have 3 offers to share with you. You can choose them a la carte or collectively. The bottom line is this: historically speaking, you could hear from Jay directly, and he welcomes some follow-up direct contact. Historically speaking, we drive 300 to 500% ROI for our customers. Our data scientists are easy to work with. We're accessible. We're really delivering it as a service. Our solutions are already running in the AWS cloud. We're quick to deliver value. You can see here, option 1 is we'll schedule a one-on-one for a deeper dive into the technology, coupled with developing a business case for you based on some specific use cases that we co-develop. Option 2 is a proof of value, proof of concept exercising using your data that will prove the ROI in the business case before we move forward. And option 3, for, as Vasu said, for $150,000 to get a full-blown solution, our team of data scientists for 1 year. So we thank you for your time. We look forward to collaborating with you. Have a great rest of the day and a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much, Jay and Vasu, and for everyone for joining.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.